Hi, Michael. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
It
thank
was
you
really
for
nice
inviting
meeting
me.
you. Anytime, anytime. So before we start talking about your topic, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I was all but born in Delaware. I grew up in Hockessin. I was born in Chicago, and my parents moved into Wilmington in the early 60s. My father was one of the first few black PhD chemists hired by DuPont. So that got us into Wilmington. And then we moved out to Hockessin. And so I'm a native of Delaware. I consider myself a native of Delaware, graduate in 1980 of AI DuPont High School. And I matriculated to Morehouse College and in the class of '84, and also matriculated to Georgia Institute of Technology. I got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech. I also want to give a shout out to FAME. I'm a graduate of FAME, Forum to Advance Minorities in Engineering. I was in one of the first few classes, in the first class, to participate in a summer program at the University of Delaware taking pre-calculus and computer science. That got me started in my engineering track, and completing high school in FAME, I got an internship with Hewlett-Packard Company in Avondale, Pennsylvania. They loved me, so they invited me to come back all my breaks and gave me new assignments as I progressed through my engineering program. Fortunately, in '86, they invited me to come and work full-time as a manufacturing development engineer, so I spent another 10 years with HP. In the course of pursuing my career at HP in research and development and manufacturing engineering, I met my wife, Dr. Phyllis James, at church. And at the time I was a member of 8th Street Baptist Church, and soon after, Reverend Christopher Allen Bullock came to Wilmington. We called him, and we were like his first wedding that he performed. Yeah. So I've been active in the ministry. Soon after getting married, I accepted my call into the ministry. He licensed me, Pastor Bullock licensed me to preach in 1990, and then I am also ordained in 1996. Interestingly enough, that was the year and days, within days that I left HP. Had already been working on building a business in my basement. And of all things, it had a little bit less to do with mechanical engineering at the time, but computers were very much in use. We used computer-aided design at HP workstations to do all our CAD work, but it was all based on the Unix operating system. And so I taught myself Unix, and I taught myself how to build computers, and I taught myself how to install Linux operating systems on computers that I built, and then networked them, and then realized this was all at a wave when the World Wide Web was getting started, so I started an ISP. So I did that for 4 years and sold to a larger competitor in the area in 2001. All the while I'm still in the ministry, and in 2001 I joined my wife as her practice manager. She's into family medicine, and in Old Newcastle. She started her practice, and I did that for 10 years, and then in 2003 a number of us were inspired to form a new church. So I'm one of the core planners of Canaan Baptist Church, and it was a delight to call Pastor Bullock back to Wilmington to be our pastor. He accepted. We were overjoyed, and I've been involved in various facets of ministry, from teaching Sunday school to teaching pastors Bible study. I have some seminary training. I don't have a seminary degree, but I've been to seminary. So I have a little bit of interesting background with corporate engineering, business, entrepreneurship, and ministry.
So tell me a little bit about STEM. When we met, that was what you were talking about. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, STEM is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and math. And you probably heard President Obama talk a lot about how much the country is falling behind in our test scores in science and math. And so many countries are by the time kids are graduating from high school, they're so far behind. They're in the 20th ranks out of places like China and Russia, other smaller countries that we don't even know about. So he established an initiative about 2 years ago to push more creative concepts of teaching even at the university level as well as into primary school education. And so it started a little seed and started to plant and started to grow in my mind and my spirit, because even though I wasn't doing anything in engineering at the time, I still have fond memories of things that I accomplished with friends and other engineers at HP. And well, maybe something where I could get back into it would come along. Well, in 2014, in the early summer, late spring, the Lord put on my heart to consider reaching out to young kids with the concept, because there's a lot of emphasis in high schools. There's emphasis now with magnet schools. There's emphasis in middle schools. But I'm a grandfather now to a beautiful, energetic 2-year-old granddaughter. And I just been looking at these kids, and they pick up these remotes and these phones are computers now. And how fast they learn to interact and interface with technology blows my mind. And before they even master the English language, they're already manipulating machines.
I was in the Apple store one time, and I was considering buying the 6 or one of them, and this tiny little boy was next to me, and he was not big enough to reach out and get the phone himself. And I looked around for his parents, and I didn't know where they were, so I took the phone and handed it to him, and he immediately slid, started going, and he couldn't talk. You know, and I'm like so tempted to be like, can you show me what you just did? You know, but I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you said that, it's amazing how they are so adept at that, and it's so instinctive.
And I thought back how fame was so important to me at the time. I was not the student who everyone at that point would say, you will accomplish great things. Okay, I was still trying to find myself in 8th and 9th grade, and I met my math teacher in 9th grade asked me what I was doing in his class. This was like right after class got started in 9th grade. I said, "Oh, this is the class the math teacher in high school or middle school told me to take. Well, you don't belong in this class." I was like, "Oh, I knew it. You're gonna send me into the class across the hallway, you know, to the slower class." He goes, "No, you belong in the class beyond this, if not beyond that." I said, you got to be kidding me. So he worked with me through the year, and then tutored me over the summer, and I took 2 finals and aced both of those finals and skipped a year of math. And that was soon when fame got started. And then my counselor, Mrs. Lucy McLam, asked me would I be interested in participating in a group of kids like to go to Bell Labs, AT&T in Murray Hill, to look at wafer fabrication systems, how they build semiconductors and transistors on little tiny silicon wafer chips. I was like, oh, sure, why not? And it was the same year scientists were being recognized for their discovery, or at least their measurement of the microwave background radiation, which in terms of layman's terms is basically light or heat left over from the Big Bang. And won't go into how they discovered that, but that blew my mind. Okay, and I said I want to get into science, and so I was always catching up but proving myself. And I matriculated along, and I got into engineering and science, and I achieved some things and got 2 patents. And I just have a bachelor's degree, but I work with people with masters and PhDs. And it was just mind-boggling. And I said, there's got to be other kids like me who have imagination and a will to apply themselves creatively before they begin to understand the rigor of academic
Right.
training. And so that's what I had to learn. I had to literally discipline myself to sit down and go rote by rote. So I want to, fame has been around for 40 years, and thank God for fame. If it wasn't for fame, I wouldn't be here. But younger kids, that we just had Mr. Holloway talking about the need for change in the community, and education is the key. And we need to reach out to kids at even earlier ages, I think. Not to teach them how to write code, because they're just learning our English language, but give them confidence to learn to study something, to maybe learn to manipulate it, to learn to teach it to do tasks. And so I've come up with the concept and formed a nonprofit to try to introduce concepts of STEM to kids in communities, not in schools, but in community centers, libraries, and after-school care centers. Just getting started with it. I formed a board, and I've got some concepts of design, but I want to put a curriculum behind it. So that's what we're starting to work on.